Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley, and every week we try to bring you a program related to service to others. This is the focus of Rotary all over the world, service above self. And our particular club is interested in finding ways that when we find our speakers, they are talking to us about innovation, education, entrepreneurship, these kinds of things, and we think we succeed in finding great speakers on a regular basis. This week is no exception. So our speaker today is Benay Todzo. All right, Benay is a marketing professional who's worked with all sorts of different companies, with nonprofit organizations, and she sits on the board of a number of wonderful organizations here in the Bay Area, including the American Youth Soccer Organization and Junipero Serra High School, which is where I met her, because she has been a wonderful volunteer helping them see all kinds of new possibilities for their marketing. So with that, what I would like to do is to hand it over to Benay, our speaker. She will present to us a little bit about ideas for marketing possibilities for nonprofits. And once she is done, we will meet the different members of our club on the call, and then we will have an opportunity to do a little Q&A. So Benay, welcome to the eClub of Silicon Valley, and I am excited to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much, Rushton, and thanks everybody for welcoming me this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to sharing some of my experiences. As I mentioned to Rushton earlier, it was a nice opportunity for me to be able to look back and try to aggregate and pull together some themes about some of the work that I've done with nonprofits over the years. So really looking forward to this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to walk through. So let's see. There we go. Can everyone see my PowerPoint now? Okay, good. I wish there was a way that I could move. Oh, look at that. I can move this over here. Perfect. Even better. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is marketing for nonprofits. So there we go. Okay. Having a little trouble advancing the slides. Just a little bit about me. As Rushton said, I have been a marketing professional working for large companies and small companies for the last 20 years. And that's been exciting. Those are mostly for-profit organizations, a few nonprofits along the way. But I've also been engaged with a lot of different nonprofits really since I left college. And they've ranged over a lot of different areas. From recently, when I got out of college, it was international aid and development and women's entrepreneurship. I was very involved with that. As I got married and had kids, I got really involved in education. I've worked with elementary, high school, and I'm also on a university board, to all looking at them, helping them to get their message out, make sure that the right perception of those nonprofits are in the market, and help them to really meet their objectives. Also, as Rushton mentioned, I've been involved a lot with some youth soccer and lacrosse, and a few others too. But we'll talk a little bit about that. So this is what I want to do today. I wanted to give you an overview of my thoughts about nonprofit marketing. And this is how I'm going to organize my talk today. I really believe that successful outreach for any nonprofit is a multi-pronged effort. That every nonprofit has to think about lots of different ways to get their market out, their message out, using social media, using traditional marketing and advertising. You can't just print up a brochure or put a website up and expect to be done. There's lots of different ways that you have to be reaching your audience. Really have to think about your goal. I always think about, when I'm working with nonprofits or for-profits, what's the very specific goal we're trying to reach? What do we want? Are we looking for volunteers? Are we doing an event and we're looking for a certain amount of attendance? Are we trying to raise donations? And you need to get your volunteers involved. And I'm going to talk about that a lot in my short presentation today, because volunteers are like the heart of every nonprofit. They never have enough staff. And an enthusiastic volunteer corps can really be, and they can do a lot of the work for your nonprofit, but they also are a really effective carrier of your message. They're out there in the community talking about your nonprofit. But volunteers need care. They need feeding. They need recognition. You can't just use them as if they were regular employees. I mean, you really need to recognize them and to nurture them. And I have a few other tips too I'll share. Okay, so let's get started. Outreach. A good website is really critical. And that seems very intuitive. Everyone knows you need to have a good website. But what are some tips for a good website? It needs to be very, for a nonprofit especially, it should be very simple, welcoming, current, easy to navigate, and up to date. One of the things that I see a lot is websites that grow stale. And then when you have people that come to your website, they really don't know if it's the latest information or not. You want to design something that's very simple to update and that can be kept current. So people always know they've got the latest information. You want to make your life easier with a website that works for you. So something that on the website can already answer common questions that come up all the time, and a way to take donations, let volunteers sign up, take inquiries, some way so the website can work for you. And then, of course, if you're going to take inquiries, you need to have a system for responding to them. I did work with a nonprofit that was very good about, if you have any questions, type it in here. And then nobody was responding. And, that's just, you have to think about these things all the way through. If there's criticisms, you need to take them seriously. Too many nonprofits, I find, say, well, we're an all-volunteer organization. What do you expect? Well, listen to those criticisms, take them seriously, see what you can do to make your website or whatever else it is you're doing, do better. And of course, make sure your website works on multiple platforms. I'm really big on doing outreach that's both analog and digital. People are getting information from so many different ways. You have to really think about where are the people that I want to target, and how can I get my message there, and how can I get my message in a way that's going to stick out. I mean, email and social media can work really well and be so cost effective, but everybody's email boxes are flooded with email. That may not be an effective way to get your message there. How can you get your message open? What's your call to action? And if you want to do social media, how, are you going to do it regularly? You can't just post occasionally and expect it to stick out. If it's not good or if it's not current, it can be a negative. So you really have to think it all the way through. Don't just, start something on social media just to be hip. You have to really think about all the way through. Who's going to answer it? Who's going to moderate it? Who's going to watch the post? Who's going to respond to posts? And otherwise, it's not worth it. But don't forget the old-fashioned methods. And this is what I mean about analog and digital. With AYSO, which is an organization I've been very involved with, which is a youth soccer organization, we do it all. We do email, we have a website. We don't have a big social media presence, but we do put up banners. We've done tables, a number of these things out here, tables at arts and wine festivals. We do ads in the Park and Recs magazine. We'll have snail mail. I know organizations that do radio ads. Bumper stickers work. So think about and this lawn signs. That's a great way if you're trying to target people who are driving in your community and you know what your community is. So, for example, with the AYSO, we know the community of people we're trying to reach, and we can put lawn signs up in our town, and that's a very effective way of reaching people. So don't forget those analog methods too. Effective messaging. So when you're doing outreach, you really want to be simple, focused, and short. I mean, that's true for nonprofit or for-profit, but nonprofits typically make this mistake of, trying to tell everything about their organization. They want everyone to know what they're doing and why it's so awesome. But you don't have to make the case, extol the benefits, outline the rewards, explain the need, and share your long-term vision every single time, all in one piece. You want to be just short and pithy, and I always try to get people to think about what's the campaign, what's the goal, what are we trying to do right now? We don't have to do it all the time, but what's the message? What are we trying to do? What event are we trying to promote? What volunteers are we trying to recruit for? What donations are we trying to raise? And let's focus the message on meeting those goals. So trying to break it down into more manageable pieces is usually much more effective. And telling a great story is really helpful. So that will give you a reason to keep coming back. And a lot of nonprofits are very good at this. They get a campaign, they get people emotionally connected to their nonprofit and the work that they're doing. And then you want to keep telling that story. What's happening next? So, for example, if you had a campaign for helping the Hurricane Harvey victims, you do this big campaign from the Red Cross, we need help right away for the people that are suffering from this natural disaster. Well, if you want to keep that going, you want to keep those volunteers and your donors engaged, you need to tell them what the next iteration is. Keep that story alive. Keep the story coming with the next chapters. There's an organization called Art Lifting, which creates art, which promotes art that's created by homeless and disadvantaged artists. And they do a very good job of telling the story of these artists, where they've come from, what their backgrounds are, what mediums they are working in, and and how their art's developing. And that's really engaging for people and keeps you connected to the nonprofit. The SPCA, of course, is very good about talking about, these cute animals and, what their story is and how your donations can help this small, it's pulling at, you're creating a story, you're creating a connection. And as a sort of similar to that is giving your nonprofit a personality. I noticed that UVA, my son was applying to UVA, University of Virginia, and I noticed that on their website, they have a blog that comes from the admissions department, and it's written by a dog, some person who's impersonating a dog, and it creates, and I'm not saying that anybody necessarily want to do this, but it creates a personality for that admissions department. It's fun, it's whimsical, it creates this, connection. And that's kind of what you want. You want your nonprofit to not just stand for what it stands for, but have a personality so that it can really connect with people. With AYSO, the example I gave before, sure, it's all about the kids. We're promoting kids, promoting soccer for youth and getting them engaged, and you want them to be healthy and trying sports. But what we really talk about when we're promoting our club is the community. We want the parents engaged. We want grandparents to come to the games. We want mothers and fathers to be coaches and referees, because we want that whole thing to feel like a community. Everybody wants to be a part, and there's lots of ways to plug in. We have people that are still involved in our AYSO organization that no longer have kids in the program, that continue to volunteer and contribute because it's a community organization. So that's what I mean about giving your nonprofit a personality. So goals. As I mentioned before, I really like it when people are very specific about what they're trying to do with their outreach or their marketing campaigns. And if you can define a campaign, you're sort of ahead of the game. So here's an example of a group I worked a little bit with. It's called the Peninsula Basket Brigade. And so what they do is once a year, they deliver Thanksgiving meals, or the ingredients for a Thanksgiving meal, to deserving families all throughout the Bay Area, from San Francisco down to San Jose. And they get the baskets together, and then they get a group of drivers who come and deliver the meals. So what they do is they split the campaigns into bite-sized pieces. So the first one is during the first part of the year, they're working with community partners to identify families and deserving families who can use these meals, and they look for volunteers. Then the next phase of the campaign is to get in-kind donations. So the turkeys, the stuffing, the apple pies, the potatoes. And then the third phase is that they're looking for drivers to come in and dollars that they need, and they also are trying to raise money at that time. So it's very specific. Each phase has its own goals. It's got its own messaging. It's got its own outreach effort. And that helps them to be very successful with each phase. So it's not confusing. People really understand what's going on, what they're trying to achieve, and how to target their messages and their outreach. AYSO, same idea. I talked about a community soccer. It's aged, for kids aged 3 to 18. Well, what's easy for AYSO is once you get kids that have come in and started to play, it's relatively easy to get players to come back every year. You know, if they had a good experience, they can sign up for the next year. What's challenging is to get them in at the beginning, to find those youngest preschool players and to find referees. Nobody wants to be a referee. So that's where we put a lot of our effort. It's not, you know, there is some low-level outreach and marketing for returning players, but there's a big push to get the things that we really want. We're focused on the referees. We know how many we want, what types of referees at which level, how we're going to train them, who we're going to work out, who we're going to outreach to, and that's kind of the target. And that's, you know, and so that's the kind of thing that I mean. It's really, you have to figure out when you're starting, what do I need, what's going to be important, what do we need to be successful, and how are we going to get there? I have one more example, but I'm going to skip through that one. Okay. Don't ask for things that you really don't need. I see a lot of nonprofits do this. There'll be a message like, oh, we're always looking for volunteers to help out. Send us an email. Tell us how you'd like to get engaged. Well, if you don't have a very specific reason for people to volunteer, or you're not looking for, you can be very specific. I'm looking for volunteers who are good teachers, or good grant writers, or who are good at stuffing envelopes, or who are good at asking for donations. You want to be specific. Don't just ask for something general, because you can wind up turning people off. They send you an email and say, yeah, I'd like to help out, and you never respond because you don't really need someone with their skill set, or you don't really need that type of person. It can be a real turnoff. Be flexible, but maintain your standards. So this is my fun example was back to the basket brigade. Okay, they're looking for food for a Thanksgiving dinner. They want corn because that was part of the traditional Thanksgiving dinner. Creamed corn would be okay. Peas and carrots would work. If someone offers you olives, you really don't want olives. That's not really part of the standard, you know, traditional Thanksgiving dinner. So you know, it's okay to be, if you're a nonprofit, it's okay to have standards and say, look, that's thank you so much for that, but that's not what we're looking for. We're really looking for this, because you want to keep your focus, you want to keep your message coherent, and you want to keep all your volunteers marching in the same direction. If you tell them to go out and just get any kind of vegetable, then that may not, you know, you're diluting your effort, and you're not keeping your sight on the goals there. Okay. Volunteers, I'm going to spend a little more time on this one. I really think, and this is a good message for all of us, because either you're working for a nonprofit or you're volunteering for a nonprofit, the volunteers are such an important part of it. Volunteers who love your nonprofit will spread the word. They are if you work for a nonprofit that you care about and you spend a lot of time with and you donate to, you are connected. It becomes part of your identity, and you're going to talk to other people about it. And those are the types of volunteers that every nonprofit wants. You want to make sure you get buy-in from your volunteers, which means you don't just treat them like, oh, come in and I want you just to stuff envelopes today. I'm using stuffing envelopes. It's like it's such an old-fashioned thing, but you know, and you know, hello, this is your job, goodbye, you're done. No, you want to really engage them and tell them why are we doing this? Share your plans, share your goals with them. That helps them feel more connected, and again, will help them spread the word. And you want to make it fun for your volunteers and constituents. I think we've all probably been parts of groups where it's really fun to be part of the volunteer corps. Either parties, or you bring your friends to come and do things together. We're all going to drive these turkey dinners together to these deserving families. And post photos to the website so that it's a fun and engaging group that you want to be part of. And remember to reward your volunteers. Give them swag, give them t-shirts. At AYSO, the more you volunteer, the better the shirt you get. So, you know, you get it, you know, you volunteer and you reach a certain, if you've been doing it for a number of years, you're going to get a jacket, and they're cool jackets. You know, it's like, and then you want to wear them. So stuff like that really helps, because then people know that you're part of it and you're spreading the word there. Be very generous with your appreciation. Recognizing outstanding volunteers with awards once a year. Thank you so much. People who go above and beyond, who do something, take on a task that nobody else wanted to do, or take on a task they didn't know how to do and were very successful with. You want to make sure you recognize them. Send personalized letters to people who go above and beyond. saying thank you is such an easy and relatively cheap thing for a nonprofit to do, and it has such big rewards. People really feel good about that. And throw a party. Recognize your key contributor. Again, bringing your volunteers together so they get to know each other. They feel good. They feel part of the group. Other marketing tips. I think I'm big on working together with groups you can partner with and share resources. You can invite a group with a complementary mission to come to one of your events so that you can go to one of theirs, so that you're sharing expenses. You can share the cost of renting a table or buying a banner. Something obviously that wouldn't compete, but something that's complementary can be a great way to get your word out in a bigger way, and also sharing some costs. Treat your data like gold. I think a lot of nonprofits don't do a good enough job with this. Some are excellent at it, but your data is so valuable to you. All the volunteers you have, the connections that you make, the donations that you collect, and you really have to think about it and be very, very, very thoughtful about how you categorize it and you maintain it. And track your success and be organized about your records. That's often one of the last things that nonprofits will do, especially if they're young. You know, they did a great event last year, or they had a great something, but those volunteers are gone, or nobody wrote it down, and every year they're starting all over again, recreating the wheel. If you can be disciplined about writing it down and understanding what you learned from it, what you do differently next year. I mean, it's a pain. Nobody likes to do that, but it can be very, very helpful in the life of a nonprofit. Okay, my summary, and then I'll take any questions. I'm happy to answer any questions. Multi-pronged marketing is best. Don't be afraid to mix analog with digital. You look, when you're trying to get your message out, think about all the different ways that people might be able to hear your message, and how you might be able to reach people that are dispersed. A straightforward, easy-to-use website that is current is really critical. Think carefully about social media. I think it can be really effective and very helpful, but you want to under-promise and make sure you deliver on whatever you say you're going to do, so that people aren't left with a bad taste in their mouth. Effective storytelling and a personality for your nonprofit can go a really long way. People will remember that. They'll feel connected. You want to create that emotional connection. Be very focused and specific about your goals. Know exactly what you're going for. Don't fall into the trap of, oh, we'll just give this a shot and see how it goes. No, you need to know what you're shooting for and what you expect and how you're going to get there. And again, it takes discipline, but it's really rewarding. Engage your volunteers, keep them engaged, and recognize outstanding effort. I really think they'll spread the word better than anything, and they can be an untapped resource for a lot of nonprofits that don't, especially nonprofits that have both a paid staff and a volunteer staff. Sometimes they don't value or recognize the contributions that the volunteers are making. So that can be really effective for you. And then I think that's and my last slide, my last point was just that treating your data like gold. It's really valuable. All of the people that you can make connections with, the people that work, the volunteers, the donors, the community partners you may work with, any other kind of partners can be really valuable for you. And you want to track your success and document it so that you can, you don't have to recreate the wheel every year. And that's it.
Wonderful, Benay. Thank you so much. And what we want to do is, as we start into our Q&A, I want to introduce the other people on the call. All our original members of our Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley, starting with, in the direction that I'm seeing them, John Lozano, an educator here in the South Bay in California, and then Mitty Chang, one of our founding board members who has guided us with all of our technology efforts, and Yvonne Kwan is a teacher in San Jose. My name is Rushton Hurley. I'm the executive director of Next Vista for Learning, an educational nonprofit. And what I'd like to do is kind of start the questions, and then John and Mitty and Yvonne wave when you're ready with your question. But you mentioned the need for a call to action. And when we think about a nonprofit or any organization really kind of reaching out, to ask people to do something, there are these ways to do it. My guess is that you've run across some innovative calls to action over time, something that really stood out as a really excellent call to action. Are there examples that kind of come to mind for that?
Well, I guess, yeah, gosh. I was thinking about the Peninsula Basket Brigade, and they're very creative in that when they're looking for their drivers, I mean, it's not so creative, but when they're looking for the drivers, the people at the, who are going to pick up the Thanksgiving dinners and deliver them to the families who otherwise couldn't afford them, they ask for donations at the same time. So if you Russian decide that you want to come and, get your family together and have this Thanksgiving experience where you're picking up and you're delivering, well, they're going to ask you to contribute, $40 or $50 at the same time. And it's, it's an interesting idea because you think, oh gosh, I'm already donating, I'm volunteering to do this. But there is, you find that they're looking and they find that point where somebody wants to do this and they're willing to also make that same contribution. So I think that's kind of interesting too, because a lot of the heavy lifting for that is really done beforehand when people are going around and finding the families and also getting the in-kind donations. So sort of the driving is the last piece. Yeah, well, ask another question. I'll think of, there's been some other creative.
Well, on that front, the identifying somebody who's willing to give time means that you need to connect with this person and understand, where that person is in terms of wanting to help. And so, finding those extra moments for that kind of ask, I think is quite cool. I remember a really cool note coming from my university to all of us as alumni of a particular year, where there are there's these stock messages that people send out. So some expert on alumni relations will send out this note, that in a sense looks like every other note that comes from the alumni office. And I remember getting one year that was really, really different, and they did really, really well with the responses on that. And I think it was because somebody went to the trouble of kind of a creative, different kind of message, right? That person kind of almost made it sound like, all right, so the alumni office asked me to do this, and boy, they had no idea what they were getting into, or they would have never asked me. Here's what I'm thinking, and then, at that point, people are like, wow, that's kind of fun. So yeah, there's always kind of that challenge of getting a message out in such a way that people stop and remember it as distinct from others. So John and Yvonne, John, why don't you unmute and ask a question as well?
I certainly will. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. I'm watching this. I joined this call today because I'm involved with a nonprofit here in the Bay Area that does a lot of work with youth, international camps that talk about peace and social justice and sustainable development, and we have programs here locally in the Bay Area as well as internationally. So, but what you're saying in your presentation, thank you, but I'm guilty of about 90% of it, of what we didn't do right. So that's part of the reason why I like it. So we'll have to talk more offline,
Sure,
but
yeah.
I do have a question. Because we have a lot of board members, like you mentioned, who have been involved with the chapter for a long time, but their kids have kind of aged out, so to speak, and gone off to college, but they still like our organization and want to be involved. The kids that we have involved now, between the ages of 10 and 18, they communicate in a totally different way. I mean, they're not answering emails, they're not answering mail, they're on Snapchat or whatever the direct messaging is. So there's a disconnect of what we're trying to do when we try to reach out to our community. We have parents communicating in one method, and we have kids communicating in another method, and we want them all to come to the same event or be there. Have you run across that? I'm thinking about even like soccer, where you have the kids playing the games, but they text each other where the parents are trying to meet up and call each other or send mail or whatever. I mean, what's the happy medium, or if there is such a thing?
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I think it is a challenge. You're right. Adults are very, conversant on email and Facebook, even, which has been a good medium. But the kids are like, yeah, my son never checks email, and it's, it drives me crazy. He's a texting person, or Snapchat or Instagram. So you've got to go where they are. I mean, it's a good lesson for all of us to say you're not going to change their behavior and force them to get on email when they don't want to. We've tried that. AYSO has tried that. Sarah tries that, and it just, you can pound it into, you can put it out there, but you really have to go to where they are. If you want them to see your message, you have to make it easy for them. So you're going to have to get on Snapchat. You're going to have to, start a texting campaign, and it may be that you're using two different. It's the same message, but it's going out on Instagram because you're trying to reach the kids, and it's going out on Facebook because you're trying to reach the adults. And Sarah does that to the school where Rushton and I met. But yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. And going back to what I was saying about the website, it's sort of that same idea. You got to think about your message working on different platforms. But very good point.
Thank you. At least I'm not the only one who has that.
Yeah, no. But unfortunately, the answer is you got to go where they are, and you're going to have to do all of it.
Great. Thank you.
Very cool. Yvonne, do you have a comment or question?
Yeah. So what I've noticed a lot is one of the marketing strategies that you mentioned was sending out email newsletters. And we, in the clubs and organizations that I'm part of, we track the data, and we have the ability to track, the opens and the click rates and how many people actually open it and click through the links that we send. And we noticed that despite how creative we try to be with our content, despite how, we try to make it innovative, we try to make it more exciting for them, we add in videos for them or pictures, right. It doesn't really seem to do anything. So my question to you is, what advice or what strategies would you offer to make a message more creative?
So is it, can you tell me what the nonprofit is?
It's just a Rotary club, so it's kind of the 18 to 30 young professional version of Rotary.
And they're opening it, they're clicking through. So you're getting the click-throughs that you wanted, but you're not getting them to take the action that you wanted. Is that the problem?
So it seems that the click rate usually stays stagnant at about 10 to 13%.
Got it. Yeah, I think newsletters are hard. I think people have a shorter and shorter attention spans, and they are just looking for, sort of a very targeted message. And if you've got a newsletter with a lot of different messages in there, it can be really hard to get people to read through the whole thing. And so you might want to try simplifying it and having it as one message that, or one or two messages, two stories for one of your issues, and just see if you get a better response with that, and really focus on that with that one message. I think it's just hard. People are not. It's frustrating, and that people won't read through all those things. But that's my guess. It's probably too long and too overwhelming, and you may be more effective with something that's just a much simpler message. One story.
Just last night, on a board that I belong to, we were talking about communication tools, and one of the things that we talked about with regard to email was that there's this large group of people, right? This really big group of people who can receive an email, right? From that group, there is this much smaller group that would actually open it, and within that group, now we're talking about people who respond to specific things. And to whatever extent, an organization can say, can we have small mailing groups for specific purposes? It might be that you are developing a relationship that allows the recipients to become used to opening the mail because the messages are targeted towards them well. Whether that plays out, I mean, it's certainly the case that email marketing is more of a shotgun than a rifle in a sense, right? But who knows?
But that's true. I think you're right about that, because you can take your data. I mean, she was talking about a newsletter, but you're talking about email campaigns, and you can definitely do that if you keep good records on your the constituents in your database about who is in from which neighborhoods, or what campaigns they've responded to before, or what age they are, or, you know, for the club, you know, what industries they're interested in or they've expressed interest in, then you can definitely target your messages in a much finer way to get something that you think that they'll be interested in. And then you can also, you know, if you've got the main message, you know that they're interested in education, so you're giving them a story about education. Maybe you throw in a second story about something, you know, something else that you're hoping that they might be interested in, just to see how they, you know, as a test to see if they might also be interested in that.
Good stuff. So as always, we run to a certain amount of time, and you know, have to wind it down. For all of those in our club who are watching the recording and saying, "Oh no, but it would be so cool to ask these other questions." That's why you want to join the recordings, because after we stop recording this, we keep talking. We get to talk to these cool and interesting people all the time, which is a wonderful perk of being in the club. So for all of the people who have been a part of our club experience this week, you've watched this recording, you've gone through our meeting, you've taken in all of this great information that Benay has shared with us. We thank you for joining us. We hope that you will come back again, and we hope that you will let us know that you are here. So just a little bit farther down the screen, you'll see an attendance form. Visiting Rotarians, if you type your email address in correctly, then you'll get a reply that lets anyone you want to pass that along to know that you made up in this meeting with our club. Additionally, there is a space at the bottom for leaving a comment about what was in the program or anywhere else in the meeting, and we would love for you to share your thoughts or even reply to the thoughts of others in that section. So we hope that we will earn your interest in coming back week after week and being a part of what we do. Benay, every week we like to hand it back over to our speaker for a final thought, and I will do that with you now.
Oh, thank you so much. First of all, thanks again for giving me this opportunity. I really enjoyed it, and I'd be happy to follow up with anyone who has additional questions. I guess, you know, my final comment is really thinking about just reiterating what I was saying about volunteers and how important they are for every nonprofit, and how important they are for driving and spreading the message of whatever it is that you're trying to do, and to make sure you're taking good care of them, thanking them, encouraging them, and bringing them together, and finding ways to help them feel that connection to your nonprofit. So whether you're a volunteer or if you're a director of a nonprofit, I hope you'll take that to heart. Thank you again.
Thank you, and everyone, we will see you next week.